Hi, everyone. This is TechCrunch Live. I'm thrilled to be back this year hosting this event, and it's going to be even better than ever. But, we had some changes, but the mission remains the same. TechCrunch Live is here to help founders build better venture-backed businesses. And on this first event of the season, it's very timely. We're going to have a great conversation on what to do if venture capital says no, like everyone. What if you're trying to raise your Series A and you can't find anybody to give you some money? And that's kind of why we have Sameer Shariff, CEO and co-founder of Cambly, and Sarah Tavel, who will be joining us in a little bit. She's a partner at Benchmark. Sameer was building Cambly and needed additional capital, but every VC turned down his Series A. So what did he do? Well, he changed a few things, tweaked a few levers, and decided to go after profits to keep the doors open, and it worked. He's since raised a Series A and a Series B and is now on the show. And this conversation is for everyone. If you read TechCrunch, it looks like every viable company raises a ton of money from venture capital, but that's just not the case. The vast majority of small companies need to be profitable from day one, and they cannot rely on VCs to subsidize products. Cambly's story isn't just a fundraising story; it's a story about how to make money. But just one more thing before we get into it: if you're watching the show on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter Spaces, thank you so much. And thanks for joining us. But please jump into Hopin. There should be a link appearing in those chats right now. And you can jump into Hopin, where it's our networking platform, and you can ask questions to the guests of the week too. And we're going to be back every Wednesday, starting this week through the rest of the year. So Sameer, thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited that you're here, and let's jump right into this.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, I was hoping you could just start by painting a picture for us. It's 2016, and you just closed your seed round. What was the trajectory of Cambly? Where are you guys going, and what did it look like?
Yeah, so we started the company a while ago, and kind of had just been focused on steadily growing in a sort of lean and efficient way. And we had a small team. The business was growing at like a pretty healthy rate. And 2016 or so, we were growing well, starting to think about, okay, when are we going to raise our Series A? Come 2017, I think we're looking like lots of other startups where we're like, okay, like we don't have a ton of capital, we have pretty ambitious plans. I think this summer we'll go and raise our Series A. And I guess should I share a little context on what Cambly is, or you want to jump right into it? Yeah, so Cambly, just to kind of for context, is an English education company, and so really simple app. You open the app, you press the button, and within a few seconds, you get a friendly native English speaker over video chat. And so it's a two-sided marketplace. On one side, you have students. On the other side, you have tutors. The students pay to use the service; they pay a subscription fee, and the tutors get paid to talk to students. We set out to build this company to help people work on the English skills. It's a huge problem in the world. But I think what's pretty interesting about it, it's a problem that many of us in the English speaking world just overlooked. When you look at it kind of globally, there's about 8 billion people in the world. There's 6 billion of those people who don't speak English. So the broadest sense, that's the market. It's an enormous problem. And by the way, of those 6 billion people, 1.5 billion are actively trying to learn English right now. And so this huge problem in the world. But yeah, what I think is really interesting about it is those of us who speak English, we just don't see it every day. We don't feel the problem ourselves. People we know don't have this problem either. And so although it is one of the larger problems in the world, it's not something English speaking world really noticed. We got interested in this problem from our own sort of experience learning other languages. But then when we started looking at the language learning market more broadly, we realized like we wanted to learn, Spanish and French respectively, but the world really wants to learn English. And so that's kind of where we decided to focus on. And we've sort of never looked back since that. But yeah, coming back to kind of 2016, 2017, we'd been working the company for a couple of years. We'd gone through Y Combinator, raised a seed round, raised a bit more money after that. But we're kind of gearing up to raise a Series A. We kind of let burn get a little high. I think in hindsight, we'd maybe raised a little too little money, and maybe hired a little more than we should have given the money we raised. And so definitely some lessons I look back and say I should have been watching the burn more closely back then. But like all other stuff, we said, oh, we'll just go and raise our Series A and continue on another journey. And so that was the plan. but as you teased a bit, we went out to raise, and as things did not go according to plan at all. We thought we have a strong team, we have a good business, it's growing. We'll do things that Silicon Valley startups do, and raise money and continue on our journey. But we got a lot of no's, and we went all out. I've probably talked to every Silicon Valley investor you've ever heard of, and they've probably said no to Cambly at some point along our journey. And so that was a big challenge. We weren't actually in that strong of a position in that point. Like we had some amount of money in the bank, but not a ton. We were burning a decent amount. Fortunately, my co-founder, his name's Kevin, he and I had sort of circled up before we went into the fundraise, and we said, okay, what do we do if this doesn't work? And we kind of came up with a plan B. And the plan B was like, figure out how to make the company be able to stand on its own 2 feet. Like, let's get the company to cash flow positive. And so I think, because we had planned this out in advance and we'd sort of thought through what would happen if this fundraise doesn't go as we hope it will, we basically we did not procrastinate. We started executing on plan B immediately, the exact day we said we're going to start doing it.
So if I can jump in here, plan B was to go profitable overnight, right? Well, and that's at its core, Cambly is a marketplace. So when did you initially plan to be profitable? What was on the roadmap?
Yeah, so we hadn't really figured out exactly when we were going to try to get to profitable or cash flow positive. I think we weren't spending irresponsibly. We had a pretty small team, but I don't know if I had an answer to that back then. I don't know if we had an exact plan of when we would hit that level. But when we didn't get any money, whatever hypothetical future date it was, we pulled it in really close because we could see how we were trending and what was going to happen if we didn't get to cash flow positive. Sure. And so we started executing on the plan very, very, very swiftly. And I think it was very educational for me in a lot of ways. I think a lot of the decisions we made are decisions we would have made with the company, but they would have taken a really long time. But when you're kind of in that moment, and it was the first and only time in our history that we had an existential risk. If we didn't figure things out, Cambly would not be able to continue to exist. Although that was incredibly stressful and challenging to have this existential risk, hey, Cambly may not exist if we don't make the right set of decisions in the next few weeks. That was super stressful and challenging, but it also brings a ton of clarity to what you need to prioritize and what you need to work on. And so, I think it was challenging and stressful, but it was also one of the most productive periods in Cambly's history, the next 4 months. Sure. And so we started executing on it immediately. And the first thing we did is we raised prices. And so, the nice thing about our business, and I remember thinking about this at the time, if we were a free consumer app, it would have been a lot harder to figure out what to do there. But we weren't. We actually made a lot of money. There was a lot of money flowing through the system. And I remember thinking, if only we could keep a little bit more of that money, we'd be in so much better of a position, right? And so, we knew we had these levers, but we just weren't pulling them. And then when we found out the fundraise was not going the way we wanted, we said, okay, let's start pulling them, and let's start pulling them right now. And so the biggest lever there was pricing. And so we actually, over the course of 1 week, we raised all of our prices across the company. And that's a scary thing to do, because you always kind of have this fear that hey, what if people stop buying? Sure. When you raise the prices. And I think we had this intuition that what we're building is super valuable to people. It is so much better than what exists out there. And it's something that people are going to be willing to pay for. And this was our intuition, but we tested that intuition. Again, not out of choice, but because we were kind of forced to. And what we saw was, I think, amazing. We raised our prices all over the course of a week. And our gross profits, so what we kept after we paid our tutors, it started to climb instantly. And I think, what was amazing is those kind of intuitions we had about people willing to buy, they totally came true. People kept buying at the higher price, and we just literally overnight kind of had a much, much healthier business.
Well, I got to bring Sarah in here, because I think she has some advice too, right? she's on the other side of this, and she's the one that tells people no. I'm curious. I'm curious, how many times a month do you tell people no, Sarah?
If it includes my kids, a lot.
Yes, yes. So what happens after that? I'm hoping to do a role playing here. Let's say I pitched to you, Sarah, and I didn't do something right, but we had a good conversation. What do you expect from me as a founder? What can I do to keep you engaged?
Oh, so we meet and it's not a fit at that point, just kind of keeping us engaged. And I have to apologize just for everybody. Like my daughter had something happen this morning, so I'm a little rattled, distracted, and I might need to pick up a call. But so, like at the end of the day, like we know there's a few truths about our job and the job of the founder. First of all, the founder's job is really freaking hard. And there are moments along, the trajectory of a company where you have things like what Sameer was talking about for Cambly, where you have like real, you have moments where it's like, feels like it's working, but maybe not working enough. And, you're making progress, but you don't know if you're making enough progress. And then you can also have these really super focusing moments when you make a lot of progress. And then there's like, you're going through that journey, and then you have these VC meetings, and the VC meetings have not, sometimes you can really control when they happen, and you have a great event, and then you go out and raise. But there's a lot of times when you'll meet with a VC and it maybe isn't exactly stars aligning for where your company is and where the VC is. And that happens, like, I want you to know that happens a lot. Like there are several investments in our portfolio. Actually, Cambly, one of my partners, met Sameer for the A, where the stars don't yet align for whatever reason. And then you progress a little bit further, and then they do. And so I think, like, I would always, it's so easy for me to say it, but knowing that a no most of the time is actually just a not yet. And as you make more progress in whatever you're pursuing, like, send update emails. I love when I get emails all the time from founders that I've met in the past and really enjoyed the conversation, but for whatever reason, it wasn't yet in our strike zone. And then we kind of keep a dialogue up, and you never know when there's just enough of things that like start to kind of fit into place where it may end up being the right fit. So don't be shy about that.
Yeah, that's great. Sameer, can we go back to that fundraise that did not work out? Is there something you can point to as the main culprit of why you did not raise that capital?
Yeah, I think there were a couple things. I think one, as I touched on, like, Cambly's kind of a weird business in a lot of ways. We were co-founded by a couple of Americans in San Francisco, and we're building a product that is for everyone but us, which is, pretty unusual. Like, we speak English already, and we were trying to build something that served everyone else. And I think the way, I think that has lots of implications of how you actually grow the business and how you build it, how do you go to market. So lots of interesting things that we've had to do very, very differently from other companies. But I'm sure you've heard the, like, when you're starting a company, solve one of your own problems, or solve a problem that you see every day. And this is just not something you would come across as an English speaker. If you look at yourself and you look at the people you know, the way that comes up in fundraising is the same is true for investors. Like, the first time you talk to an investor and pitch them on this problem, like, it's just not something they think about, not something you're hearing about every day. And so I think it's that much harder to convince them that, like, hey, this is actually a really big global problem when you look globally. It's just not a problem that we feel here in Silicon Valley. And so I think that made it a challenge. I think that there had been a handful of companies that had gone after language learning before us, and none of them were, great outcomes. Obviously, Duolingo's done really well in recent years, but there was no Duolingo example when we were getting started. And so I think you're kind of following a trail of companies that have struggled to get the traction that VCs get excited about, and so you have to sort of convince them that, like, hey, this is really different, and that's hard. I think that combo is really challenging. And then I think there were like the business was in a good spot. Like we were growing, and like I think if we were in another industry, I think there's a chance we could have gotten the round done. I do think because of those two things, we just had to hit bigger milestones than other companies would have to do in order to kind of prove that hey, there was something really here. But the business, it was still early. Like there were ways we could make it better, and I actually learned a lot from a lot of those no's. Like there were things that there were themes that came up that like again I think were really clarifying for me. Like okay, I really understand how this super smart investor is thinking about and looking at our business, and there's not the data doesn't tell the best story here yet, and it gave me a really clear idea of like what do I need when I go back. What do I need to show? Like, what do I need to prove? What do I need to show? And so it gave a lot of focus, I think, on how we could make the case that much more irrefutable. I think when you're not in a hot space that all VCs are excited about, and it's not a problem they see or feel every day, and there's not a lot of companies that have been really successful to sort of draft off of. I think the way I thought about it is like, okay, if we're going to prove that there's something here, like we're going to have to do it ourselves. We're going to have to make the business so strong that it's irrefutable if there's something here.
Yeah, I'm hoping you can name those things. What did you do to make the business so strong?
Yeah, so I think the one piece of feedback I heard a lot was around like unit economics, and like our unit economics were like they weren't bad. We weren't losing money on every customer, but we had definitely we were leaning into growth, and in the process had let our margin slip a bit. And so that impacts kind of what the margin of your business is. It also impacts things like what your LTVs are, what your LTV to CAC ratio is, things like, is this a scalable business? I think the other thing that we were in that situation is, we're a very global business. So we have a lot of different markets, and we had some markets that were just still really early. So they were on this like really good trajectory, but they were super small. And actually at the time, our biggest market, we were having some challenges with. And so, I knew kind of what was all going on underneath it, but it was a pretty hard data story to explain where it's like, hey, your biggest market is not growing that fast. These small markets are growing really, really quickly. How do I know as an investor that they're not just going to hit the challenges at the same scale as that other market? And so I think a combo of like some of the economics of the business, like just making the unit economics that much stronger, the price changes, getting into cash flow positive, all of that fed really well into it. And then honestly, also just time, like letting those early markets continue to scale and show that, hey, this is actually different, and actually fixing some of the bigger markets to get them growing quickly as well. And so, I think a little bit about what Sarah was saying, like the not yet, like we went out to raise not because it was the perfect time for Cambly from like here's the growth story, here's what the business is like we went out to raise because we needed money. And I learned a lot, I think, through that process that I now like to go out to fundraise when it's the right time for the business. Like the business is at such a good point and such a good trajectory that it makes for a really, really compelling story to tell investors. And I like to be able to choose when that is. And when you're cash flow positive, you can choose. When you're not, and you depend on external capital, you kind of are forced, the timing is forced on you. And I think that was something that happened to us in 2017. And once we got to cash flow positive, we've ever since then been able to choose when we decide to go out to fundraise. And I think maybe even more importantly, who we decide to work with. Because, if you'd asked me in the thick of that, like keeping the company alive, I probably would have taken money from anyone who was willing to give me money. But once we got to cash flow positive, we had the ability to be a lot more selective. And I think getting to work with Sarah, getting to work with Jeremy Levine, who led our Series A, like it's been super clear how value add and how incredibly impactful that can be to have people around the table like that. And so I'm actually really grateful that nobody gave us money back then because we would have taken it, and I think the company would have been worse off as a result of that.
Sarah, can you tell me how it changes the calculus on your end when a company has cash flow positivity?
You mean the like 1 in 1,000 times when it does? Maybe 1 in 3,000 times. I mean, it is just a very rare and special part of what Cambly is. Like there are a lot of companies that will have, cash flow positive data on a per customer basis. Of course, like SaaS companies, you get paid upfront typically, for a year of providing the service, which is part of what's remarkable about the SaaS business model. But then those companies often have pretty significant sales and marketing costs, engineering costs, et cetera. And so as a company, you'll never see a subscale SaaS company that's cash flow positive, or at least it's exceedingly rare. And so, the dynamic that Cambly captured was just very unusual and special to see. And I just want to underscore also like the point Sameer was making, like I especially feel, just about how, in a way, venture capital can facilitate a kind of almost bad habits, or like but I would say even bad habits when it comes to a business model. Like there's not the forcing function that the constraint that Cambly went through really forges out of you. Like I probably, Sameer, I think what Sameer is suggesting makes a ton of sense to me. Like if Cambly had been able to raise more venture capital, and they never would have made this. I'm sorry, you guys. This is just my daughter's doctor. Okay. I'll be right back.
No, totally fine. Sameer, I had questions about customer acquisition for you. Did that change at all when you guys switched from your model and before raising the Series A?
Yeah, I think so we have kind of an interesting customer acquisition story in general. I think, my co-founder Kevin and I are both engineers and kind of product people. And so when we were getting started with the company, we built an app and we just put it out there, and then people showed up and tried to deliver a really great experience. We grew in the really early days through like word of mouth and kind of app store discovery. Those two things kind of fueled our early growth. But as I mentioned, we have customers all over the world, and so we're really like marketing people not like us in other countries and other languages to other cultures. And so actually our first employee at the company, so Kevin and I are two former Google software engineers. First employee at the company was a Korea country manager, and so Korea was this market we were really interested in. They're very into English education, and we met someone who we thought would be a really good fit and kind of complement the skills we had. And within we had barely made any traction in Korea, despite our like fascination with the market. We'd barely made any traction there at the point we hired her, and within a couple months, it was our top market. And so naturally, we were like, "Wow, something worked really well there. We should try to do that again." And so I think kind of one of the most interesting aspects of our customer acquisition story is I think less the like specific channels that we've gone after and more the like organizational structure that we've built in order to like build a truly global company. And so, in the very, very early days, like we had an app that was localized in 10 languages. We hadn't raised $1. We just bootstrapped company. So I think that's pretty unusual on its own. But in order to really go to market and get to scale, we've built these teams of folks that grew up in the countries that we're going after, have like the right set of skills to not just kind of very much like founder mentality, like have the right set of skills to like go get their first customer, start to build a brand there, and then as they scale their business, like build out teams to support those businesses. And so that's something I think that's like really unique and unusual about our company, and a big part of our go-to-market strategy that's been super successful.
Where is Cambly going to end up in about 5 years from now?
Yeah, so our mission as a company is to bring high quality English education to every English learner in the world. And so, as I mentioned, there's 1.5 billion people in the world that are learning English, and Cambly's come a really long way. I'm really like proud of the scale we're at. We're having a huge impact in the world already, but we are very, very far from that 1.5 billion. We are just scratching the surface there, and we've got kind of way more ahead of us than behind us in order to achieve that ambitious mission. What does that actually mean for what Cambly evolves to be? I think there are a lot of things that we need to do to reach more of that 1.5 billion people. I think one really big and kind of obvious one is price. And so Cambly is inherently really expensive because you're paying for one-on-one time with a native English speaker. And so our one-on-one product inherently prices a lot of people out. And if we want to help every English learner in the world, we're going to have to innovate there. And so we actually just recently launched a group product where you can have a small set of students share a tutor, and that dramatically brings down the cost, and makes basically Cambly a lot more accessible and affordable to English learners all over the globe. That's not going to get us to 1.5 billion. I think we're going to continue to have to innovate and figure out how do we reach more and more of those people. But I think from a product direction, that's a major area where we need to go in order to fulfill that mission. We're also really excited about just making for a better, healthier marketplace. And so I think another really interesting thing about Cambly is our supply, the tutors in our marketplace. They're like very different from one another, and there's like a ton of diversity in that community. We've fostered and deliberately attracted diversity there. And for a student, the matching you with the right tutor is actually really valuable. Like we could find someone who shares some interests with you, maybe has a similar personality or style to you, someone who has your same job. So when you talk to them, you don't just focus on everyday English, but you can focus on the specific language and terminology you need for your job. So if you have an international VC, maybe you match them up with Sarah, and then they can talk about cash flow positive and LTV and CACs, LTV to CACs, and so forth, right? And so you can imagine how, like in every industry, there's like, early on, our value was we were going to deliver you a friendly native English speaker instantly. But the vision was always, we're not just going to give you a friendly native English speaker, but we're going to give you the perfect person for you. And so, your English speaking counterpart, if you will. And so as we've scaled the marketplace, we've gotten much better at that. But I think we've got a lot of work to do there. And so really, really excited about how we can improve the product and the user experience from that angle as well.
We have a couple more minutes here left, and I want to talk about fundraising a little bit more. And you guys did end up raising a Series A, and you raised a Series B. Are you raising anything else right now?
We're not raising at the moment. We're just heads down growing the business. But I think we'll come out to fundraise again. I like to kind of be in fundraising mode or not, and we're not in fundraising mode right now. But we'll come out when the time is right.
Sarah, I'm hoping you can give some advice on fundraising right now in the current environment. What should founders be doing? What shouldn't they be doing? And who should they be talking to?
And I'm sorry again, you guys. It's unlucky timing today. What should they be doing with fundraising? I mean, it's it's a broad question.
It is a broad. Well, let me narrow it for you. Marketplaces. What's the challenge in building marketplaces right now? There's so many of them out there. Cambly is not really all that unique, if I can be honest. So what's the challenge here?
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of challenges that you see right now in the market. I'd say like the first one, the biggest one that I'm feeling in terms of the companies that I have the privilege of meeting with is that there's not a lot of white space. People are still, we kind of feel this across all categories of companies, right? In consumer, marketplaces, even SaaS and B2B generally, is that the incumbents are very strong. And so you're trying to find be a heat-seeking missile always for a place to focus where there's enough room that you can grow. Because as a marketplace, you're always, when you're trying to get your customer to come and the supplier to come, they're always going to be comparing you against any substitute that they have in the market. And so to earn that right for that transaction as the floor of all the potential substitutes, like the quality of those other options keeps on going up and up and up. It just keeps raising the bar as a founder for finding the right segment and what the offering is that you have to bring to the table. The second thing that I see a lot when marketplaces, and I wrote a whole blog series on this, is, there's this proclivity or this temptation, I should say, as a marketplace founder that you want to grow GMV really quickly. And oftentimes the fastest, easiest way to grow GMV is to be a mile wide and an inch deep in the thing that you're offering. You're chasing, I call it chasing GMV, when really the way to build an enduring marketplace is to become dominant in any particular segment And to do that, you have to really, really focus. And so I see founders all the time, and it almost breaks my heart where I'll meet them and they'll, let's take a local marketplace as an example. They'll have started in a segment and then very like in a city, let's say, and then they'll very quickly launch cities 2, 3, 4, and 5 before they've really knocked the cover off the ball on that first city. And so I'm just a big focus person in the beginning.
And that's series you wrote. Is that a hierarchy of marketplaces?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to drop that into the hot pink chat so everyone has access to that.
Yeah. And then the last thing I'll say is just like, okay, so I'm saying focus, make your customers really happy. But then the last thing that you all then as a Series A investor at Benchmark, what we always then want to make sure is that you're not getting kind of caught in a cul-de-sac, as they say. Like you want to find a segment of the market where the white hot center for your product market fit, basically. But then you want to be able to make sure that you don't get stuck then in a very small market like locksmiths or whatever, that you're going into a market that if you get that flywheel spinning, you can keep growing and growing and growing into something that's really meaningful.
That was a very good answer. And Sameer, I'll give you the last word on marketplaces. What have you learned over the last few years building one?
Well, I'll build on what Sarah said about focus. I think we, unlike most of the other like language learning companies out there, we focus just on English. Like that's the only thing we offer. And honestly, like when I was getting started working on Cambly, I thought, we'll solve English, this month, and then next month we'll add some other languages. Over time, I've learned that I've got sort of become more and more focused on us just solving for English. And as Sarah touched on, you might think, if I want to expand my GMV, I can just add other languages. But when you kind of constrain yourself to like English, which is obviously an enormous problem. So we're not in any sort of cul-de-sac. We're in whatever the opposite of a cul-de-sac is. It's an enormous space. And so it's not like the thing limiting us is not that like we haven't added other languages. It's that we need to reach more of those English learners. And when you constrain yourself to something like English, what you can do is then get just a lot more sophisticated within that space. And so, English isn't just English. Like, what if you could, all the matching things we talked about, like, what if you could perfectly serve a software engineer trying to learn English, or perfectly serve a doctor trying to learn English, right? Like you can actually start to subdivide and get really, really strong in these really specific verticals within English. And I think that's something that like, if you were trying to do the opposite of that and add everything else and add English and maybe add like math tutoring, and you could just imagine how you could kind of get sucked into this GMV game. You're gonna kind of get a mile wide and an inch deep. You're gonna spread yourself thin, and nothing is gonna be exceptional.
Sure.
And I think what we want to do is English learning is an enormous problem in the world, impacting billions of people. We just want to deliver the best experience imaginable for those people. And I think the focus has helped us a lot, and thinking a lot kind of how that pairs with marketplaces is you always have to be thinking about liquidity. How do I build really healthy liquidity in the marketplace? And so, we got liquidity for friendly native English speakers. Do we have liquidity for software engineers or doctors or anyone else? Like maybe not quite yet, but we can get there with the right level of focus.
Sarah?
You don't mind if I just build on that a little bit, because I know I had to step away, but for me that I preach this all the time. And then I remember downloading Cambly for the first time when, we first found out about Cambly for the Series B, and I was, scheduled it. I was, what is this Cambly thing? And I downloaded the app and opened it. And then I had this like aha magic moment with the product, which was that there, right after downloading, I had 5 minutes of free tutoring time with an English tutor on demand. I could just click right there, and there was an English tutor that I got connected to. And it was this incredible experience, and it was just like this aha moment for me, because every other language marketplace I've ever met, and there's several out there that are all incredible businesses, but because they're catering to the English user wanting to learn Spanish for their trip, or the French user who's going to Germany for a trip and wants to pick up some German, or whatever language pair you can imagine, they have to build a marketplace that kind of serves all those different use cases as a lowest common denominator. And when instead you get to focus, and in a market that is obviously incredibly big, but like easy to kind of be unassuming from the outside. I love businesses that are underestimated from the outside, basically. Here you have this focus that results in a product experience that's really differentiated. And that's like the magic of focus. And that's what I think is so compelling about what the Cambly team, where they started and what they ended up unlocking.
Real quick, I'm way over time, but I got to know, what was your conversation with the tutor like? Did you tell them that you were going to invest?
Oh my God, it was a little awkward. I at first I was like halting, and then I was just like, I'm just curious about Cambly. Tell me. And so I got to learn a little bit about him and his experience of the product.
Well, that's great. And Cambly has a great story, and it's going to continue to be told for years to come. So thank you so much for both of you for joining us and having this conversation. But we're not done yet. We still have a little more time with you. We have 3 companies lined up, and they're going to pitch to you guys. And we call this segment Pitch Practice. And the idea is, when you're a founder, you have to pitch to everyone, anyone that can listen to you. And you two are some of the best. So we have 3 companies that are going to pitch to you for 2 minutes. And then we're looking for 4 minutes of feedback on the pitch itself, not necessarily the company, unless there's some red flags you want to throw out. But we're just going to get feedback on the pitch. So we have 3 companies lined up, and they just found out. So the first one is Iwello. Iwello, are you there, sir?
Yes, I am.
Hi there. How are you?
I'm very fine, thank you.
Great. Well, you have 2 minutes to introduce us to your company, starting now.
Okay, so my name is Adijon Ismail. I'm from Nigeria. I'm the CEO of Iwello. So Iwello is pidgin for I'm fine. So in Nigeria at this moment, we have over 200 million people. And out of those 200 million people, about 88 million live on less than $2 a day. They live on less than $2 a day. And in one of the biggest cities in Africa, which is Lagos, over 6 million people live on that, less than $2 a day. Now, ultimately, this means that these people cannot really afford consultation, because average cost of consultation is $5 to $25. That means they can afford to see a doctor, talk less of having really quality healthcare. So that's why we created Iwello. Iwello is a platform that allows anyone, regardless of your income class, to get access to quality consultation with any medical personnel from any field, starting from less than $1. Now, our model is actually hinged on 2 things. We charge 30% for every consultation done, and we also charge 20% for any referral to diagnostic centers. And also, the unique thing about Iwello as regards other competitors is the fact that we offer immediate consultation, and it's also affordable. Where would you find a less than $1 consultation anywhere? That's what we offer. So basically, that's it. Thank you.
That was very good. Thank you, Ishmael. And Iwello, is that how you say it?
Iwello.
Okay, great. I just put the link into the Hopping chat so everyone can go to your homepage. Sarah, can we start with you? Do you have any feedback?
I was hoping you'd start with Sameer. First of all, no, thank you. And it's such an important value proposition. Like I love, I'm a big fan of the problem, solution, results kind of flow. And so you did a nice job of articulating and helping me understand, just because I'm not that, I'm not current on the Nigerian market, what the pain point is there. And then you talked about the solution. I know you only have 2 minutes, so what can you say? I'd be curious how, of course, you get that supply side in a way that's economic. And then the only question for me was then, what are the results? I was kind of left kind of curious what traction you have so far, what you're seeing in terms of the value proposition for both sides.
Okay, thank you very much. So what we did is we ran a beta in a particular location in Lagos, specifically Bagada. So we had over almost 1,000 people signed up, and we had over 200 consultations. We actually did it for free for them. So that's what we did. And most of the people that actually came to consult were people that were artisans, people that were not that literate, because we set up a mobile kiosk, like a mobile center, where people can actually go to, where you meet an agent and you give you a device, you can easily now talk to the doctor.
Right. The one thing then that I'll say is if the beta is for free, there's, a penny chasm, which is like the difference between someone taking something for free and then having to pay even a little bit for it is a big difference. And so it's very easy to give things that cost money away for free and have the customer love it, but you don't really learn that much. And so if I understood correctly what you said, just, the next test, make sure you charge, then you'll get a real view.
Yeah, so the thing is, we actually... Okay.
All right, Sameer, do you have any feedback?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a super important problem you're working on, and yeah, you're obviously really close to it. So I'm always happy to hear entrepreneurs who are close to a problem see it every day, and then say, I'm going to do something about this. And so, and yeah, I think similar to what Sarah said, like, yeah, there's obviously a real problem and a real need. And for me as a founder, I think I found that, like, if there's a very clear and obvious problem I'm trying to solve, it's very focusing. And so I'm happy you have that. Like, maybe this marketplace kind of setup you have is the right solution. Maybe it's something totally different. But I think, you got your sights set on a problem you want to solve, and a problem that's really important and can help a lot of people. And so I think that's a great starting point. I am pretty curious about the economics of the business. Like, $1 a day for consultation sounds amazing, and then I think I immediately jumped to, like, yeah, how do you actually do that on the supply side? Like, are these volunteers? Are you paying them? Like, are they qualified if they're that cheap? Like, so I kind of jump into, like, wanting to know more about the business. But I think I like kind of where you pointed at and the problem you're trying to solve.
Yeah, Ishmael, I liked your passion behind it. It's clear that you care about it. That comes across. Your emotion is very good.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And please apply again, and we'll have you back on the show.
Thank you very much.
All right, great. Okay, next up we have Anne O'Neill. Anne O'Neill is from Adora Digital Health, and their website is adora.health. Anne, are you there?
Here I am.
There you are.
Hi.
Hello. Well, you have 2 minutes to tell us about Adora. You can start now.
Thank you very much. Hello, I'm Anne O'Neill. I'm the founder and CEO of Adora, an early stage women's health startup based in the UK. Our first product is a health app for women who are experiencing symptoms of menopause. We're raising 500k pre-seed investment to enable our launch and to become revenue generating. Menopause is the most misunderstood, under-researched and poorly managed female health condition in the world. There are 1.1 billion women in menopause globally whose needs are not being met, and many have huge spending power. In a nascent market expected to reach 24 billion by 2030, Adora represents a very attractive early stage investment opportunity. Following months of user interviews, plus an injection of VC funds from a prestigious digital health accelerator, the Adora team, who comprise one of the UK's leading conversational AI engineers, plus a senior NHS consultant gynecologist, have built an AI menopause app to improve health outcomes in women. Our enabling technology is conversational AI, onto which we've layered other technologies to create a personalised digital service, which includes diagnosis, tracking, signposting to treatment, and gynecological telehealth. Our use of conversational AI gives us a unique product experience within our competitive environment. And having tested Adora with hundreds of women, we've proven we can engage, improve health outcomes, and collect health data. In terms of go-to-market, our revenue will come from 2 sources. Firstly, we have an initial B2B2C model, and then secondly, our vision is to build the world's largest repository of digital menopause biomarkers. So this data will be invaluable to those who develop treatments and will move the dial in women's health as a result. Other things of note, we're running our first NHS pilot in March. We've secured our first B2B paid contract. We're currently running a grant-funded academic study, and our female chairs, ex-PwC and GSK, and chair of London's MedCity. Our round's now open, and we'd welcome discussion with any investor who shares our passion to build the world's #1 menopause brand. Thank you.
And that was lovely. Thank you very much. Sameer, can we start with you? Any feedback?
I thought it was like a great pitch and super clear, like kind of build up of what the problem is, the scope of it, how many people it's affecting. And I thought it was interesting to just kind of hear your point of view about how it's a big but really underserved problem right now. And so I think the sort of storytelling around the problem and the challenge that you're tackling, I think, was super clear. And I get what you built, so that's good. Like I come away feeling like I can picture what the app is, and so I think you did an efficient job getting the sort of laying out the problem, explaining what your solution was. Obviously, 2 minutes, I have lots of questions about exactly how it works, but I think really well spent time, and then exciting, I think, to hear about the B2B paid B2B contract. I think to Sarah's point earlier, like seeing that there are some early results, I think that definitely hooked me and makes me want to learn more. And so yeah, I thought overall like really good use of the 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Same. Sarah, you're muted. It's all right. We're new at this stuff.
You use the 2 minutes very effectively, and obviously very kind of covered a lot of things. I also, I liked, it's a huge market, underserved for all the reasons that you articulated. And I also, as VCs, we always are wondering, like, what's the why now? Like, why is someone able to create a product now that's disruptive against whatever other options that consumer might have? And so certainly AI is on the forefront of all of our minds right now as like a potential disruptive technology. And so I love, that you spoke to that. And so you can kind of start to imagine how the cost structure of your product will be very different than anything else in the market, and how that could break through the noise. Because it is, I would imagine there's a lot of noise in this space. And so how do you break through? I had, it wasn't totally clear on the business model, which may have just been my missing, and just, the B2B2C approch. And it made me curious of why, the question that came to me was like, oh, interesting, how to think about going B2B2C as an offering versus direct to consumer as an example. So that was kind of, and I know you can only fit so much into 2 minutes, but that's where my questioning was going to go.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, your point about timing, about the about conversational AI, chat AI, and the fact that it's come of age, B2B2C model, that's where you make money. Don't believe women in the UK because we have the NHS will pay for this. Businesses need to, 1 in 10 women leave the workplace because of menopause symptoms. So there's a lot of arguments as to why that's a good place to start. But really, we want to change what we know about women's health. So the bigger play is the menopause data lake, 10 million women. And also in terms of timing, I feel that menopause is where Headspace and Adora is where Headspace and Calm were in 2016, 2015. They reimagined mental health, and that's what we want to do with menopause. Dismiss the taboo, get people talking, and help women thrive with purpose through the second stage of their life. So that's why.
Very good, Anne. Your passion comes through as well. It was a lovely pitch.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course.
Yeah, thanks. Oh. Nice to meet you.
Cheers.
All right. Well, we got one more. It's Fabio. Fabio is going to produce Byte Night, and Fabio just found out about 30 minutes ago that he was going to do this. So here he is.
Can't wait.
Are you there?
Hi, everybody.
All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead. 2 minutes, sir.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here. My name is Fabio. I'm the founder of Byte Night. We are the world's first virtual supercomputer that is powered by everyone's smartphones, tablets, and computers. So basically, we are trying to solve a problem in the cloud computing world. Cloud computing is inequitable. Businesses spend over $300 billion on cloud computing every year. And these services are vastly overpriced because they rely exclusively on expensive data centers. And we have 12 plus billion devices in the world that are idle 8 hours on average every day. And we have online marketplaces to buy and sell almost everything, from material goods to electricity, yet no one can sell their data processing power besides cloud providers. So we are trying to tap into that market with a model that is called grid computing. So grid computing was famous in the mid-1990s. I don't know if you guys were alive back then, but these projects, like academic projects, they were very cool, but they didn't generate any, any revenue. They were not marketable products. So we are trying to revive that kind of technology by creating a data processing platform powered by grid computing, where businesses can buy high throughput processing services. And on the side, the common devices owners like me or you can sell their exceeding computing capacity. So it's a marketplace, and parallel computing can be dozens of times faster than traditional computing. The price of our service is also low because it's the lowest to keep the suppliers happy about sharing their capacity. And there is no single point of failure. The architecture is distributed, and so we are very secure and fast. Our first product is distributed video encoding.
I'm gonna have to stop you there. We're over the 2 minutes, but I think we got it.
All right,
Fabio. Nice. Thank you so much. And I do remember the 90s, and I do. So this is folding at home, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. Sameer, let's start with you.
Super cool, idea. I think you did a really good job, kind of building it up. I think maybe one of my favorite moments was when you talked about I forget the number, 12 billion idle devices for 8 hours a day. That just gave me a good visual of oh yeah, that is a lot of wasted resources. I'm curious to learn more. And I think the marketplace model is clever. I'm curious about how much consumers would be excited to put their phones into this grid and make some money, but also probably ruin their battery life and all the things that come with that. And so, but I think I know there's a well-told story, and I think you motivated it well. And I'm excited to be a customer and try some cloud compute via billions of smartphones. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting story. And yeah, curious to kind of hear about more of the business model, but I thought you used your time well.
Sarah?
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it's, look, kudos. I can't imagine what it must, 30 minutes of advance notice. It's hard to compress everything into 2 minutes, but it's a very provocative idea. That's, marketplaces, we love when someone's able to take an asset that's underutilized and bring it online. And that usually is a pretty, good recipe for building a marketplace. I think Sameer kind of touched on a question that I'd have is, you want to have, it may end up being that you end up having all these power sellers in a way, like people who kind of lean in on the marketplace and really have their 10 refurbished iPhones plugged in, and they're just minting money. I would imagine that the consumer, kind of the normal consumer, I wonder if you make enough money to make it worth the cost that Sameer was highlighting, just how much getting the supply and the demand to really match up so that there's still enough, that you create enough value that there's something that you can capture is always the tricky thing. But it probably ends up just being a really the focus on the use case that you have. And and kind of finding that white hot center. So it's not an idea I've heard before, so I'm intrigued.
All right, Fabio, cool. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your feedbacks. And yeah, just a quick note on the like economic model. We take a 30% fee. And regarding like the utility for the supplier, so just think that there is no such a service in the market right now. There are some blockchain distributed computing technologies, but you have to be a crypto wallet owner, so you can just be paid in crypto. And so since the utility is currently zero for anybody, if you have some notions of microeconomics, if you introduce a new service that grants you utility greater than zero, so I give you money for monetizing your smartphone. It can be either 1 cent per minute or 1 cent per hour. It doesn't matter. So we can keep the price as low as we can. We don't rely on some fixed costs or data center facilities. So that's a very compelling economic model for us.
Yeah, that's great. All right, Fabio, well, please apply again. And we'll have you back once you revise it. Of
course.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Samir, Sarah, thank you so much for joining in today. I appreciate it. It was a great conversation. We learned a lot.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks. A lot of fun.
Oh, good. Well, next week we have Christina Ross and Reggie from Mayfield on. So please join us again next week. We're going to be here at the same time, same place, noon Pacific on TechCrunch Live. Thank you so much. We'll see you then.